Hello and welcome to episode 13 of Big Boss Battle's Big Boss Babble. You know what, I'm going to make an aside here and say it's been 13 episodes now and I haven't messed that up yet. That's quite incredible. Right, so with me this week we have Dan.
Hello.
Hello. We've got George.
Hello.
And finally back with us we've got Toby.
Hello, it's good to be back.
Hey, excellent.
Dan finally made his cue to say hello, kind of.
I've said it every time. It's the recording software.
Yeah, that's right. Blame the recording software.
Well, I got it right this time, didn't I? It's not like I forgot the word. I don't think.
Right, so kicking off this week, we're going to go over to George, and he's got an interesting story about the ESRB.
Oh, I'm starting things off this week? Okay, cool. So, ESRB basically released a new statement, basically kind of a new policy on how they're going to deal with physical copies. So, basically, they're going to be charging about $3,000, that's American, of course, to small developers. Pretty much, they kind of made this new bracket of payments that these small developers will have to pay for them to have physical copies on the Switch, on the PlayStation, you name it, pretty much. And it's $3,000 to a small developer. That is quite a bit of money, so this caused a little bit of a kerfuffle. Some people are raising eyebrows. Some people are cool with it. Some people are, they're saying this is a good thing. Of course, there's a lot of arguments and sides and angles to look at this. But one thing I thought was particularly interesting is one question was, do we even need the ESRB? Do we even need PEGI? Do we even need these rating boards anymore? Because we have Google now. There's really no excuse for ignorance when you can Google everything these days.
Yeah, but it's not about Googling what's in a game or what is going to be considered, suitable for different ages. It's literally a legally binding rating system, like the BBFC in the UK that rates films.
Sure.
It's basically ingrained into law that things have to be rated or they can't be sold physically. Unrated, you can get unrated movies and stuff now, but even if a game gets rated as adults only, you can't buy it. If it's unrated completely, it won't go anywhere.
I see your point, but I mean, the ESRB has only been around for like 20 years here. It wasn't always like that.
No, but the games industry is obviously a hell of a lot bigger now.
Yeah, and I presume that before the ERSB rated games in America, you had your film board rating them, much like we had over here. We had
Sure,
BBFC
yeah.
before we had PEGI. I mean, in the eyes of the government, a 16 rated film or a 16 rated game is as dangerous as selling a knife to a child. And that's obviously a very strange perception, but it makes sense that you don't want to expose people of a certain age group to a certain thing, and so gating that content through age ratings, in my opinion, is required. I don't understand, however, why ERSB are suddenly trying to profit off of actually having games released. That's pretty ridiculous. How have they been funding themselves before now? Why do they suddenly want £3,000 off of every one of the games that releases physically when there's actually less games releasing physically than there ever has been? And so,
I mean, I don't know really, to be honest with you, how they've been funding themselves. I think, like I said, I think this is a bit of I guess this is a cash grab. I think there's really this has been. Indie games have been going on physical releases for a while now, and suddenly it's like, oh, now you got to pony up the dough, though. And I work with consumers like every day in my normal day job, and I've never once heard a consumer or somebody who's picked up a game gone, oh, there's an M on it, now I can't buy this for my kid. Most of the time, it's, hey, I'm letting my 7-year-old or 12-year-old play GTA 5. I've never heard anybody stop, look at a letter on a game, and decide not to buy it. I've never heard that ever.
It did happen. I used to work in retail or in games retail, and it did happen occasionally. Those ratings did take effect. It was with an older audience, and generally it was kind of with grandparents or great aunts or whatever. as opposed to the parent who came into the shop with a kid, or the parent who was gift buying because they were simply buying something to tick it off a list. And even when they had the kid present, when they had the kid present, we needed to give them a big legal spiel saying kind of like, by the way, this is rated like this for a reason, because it contains this. Think of it like an 18 rated film. You know, I can sell this to you, I can't sell this to the child.
But I mean, let's just go into a hypothetical universe where this didn't exist. It's not like everything's going to descend into chaos. It's like, oh, now I'm suddenly buying porn because there's not a letter on this. People are going to still know what they're buying. I mean, it's not like we're not going to descend into madness without a letter on a box.
I don't know, right? You say that, but let's take, for example, Conker's Bad Fur Day. If you were to look at the box of Conker's Bad Fur Day, what would you expect the game to be like?
Or Naughty Bear. As well.
Conker's Bad Fur Day is a very deceptive looking game, to be fair, though.
Exactly, but that's my point. Without that age rating being in that box, it could have been construed as a kid's game, when it clearly isn't.
Okay, but how many people got Conker's Bad Fur Day anyways? Because it was deceptively looking. How many parents bought it for their kids without even looking at the rating because of that? I mean, in the same argument you could use, it's how many kids got to play this really over-the-top kind of derogatory game because it looked all child-friendly.
Wait, what do you mean derogatory? It had a singing poo monster, but...
All right, well, I mean, I'm obviously on a lonely island over here, so I thought it was an interesting question over here.
No, it is.
To ask.
I mean, that is an interesting question. I do think that if those ratings were suddenly dropped, though, gaming would become a big scapegoat again very, very quickly. People would say, I bought this game for my 6-year-old son, and he's going around stomping on prostitutes.
In the game, I'm hoping.
Because they bought Grand Theft Auto. I mean, I remember I remember being a particular age, and Reservoir Dogs being on TV, and obviously late at night, and blood everywhere, and made me feel quite ill. I had no interest in watching it. A few years later, I was like, yeah, murder!
Well, you had to enjoy it because you were in it.
Touche. And I remember watching, I can't remember what it was now, the Bruce Lee film that also had Chuck Norris in it, and it was an 18 rated one, and it was 18 rated for practically no reason. I think there was some blood in it, and someone got slightly decaffeinated. And so that, I was like, why is this rated 18? And going back and watching Reservoir Dogs, you're like, yeah, it's just a bit of syrup. But obviously when I was younger, I remember thinking, ugh. And so there is a reason for those age ratings, but I understand what you mean regarding, is there any point at the ERSB? I mean, ratings are important, but this company that's now trying to profiteer from this, it's almost like they're trying to make themselves public enemy number one. What with this loot box stuff recently, and now charging money for indies, I think positives could come from this. I do think we could see new distributors, and we could see new small indie friendly publishers coming out going, you know what, we'll front that money, because we know we'll get it back because we love your game, and so I think it could change the industry for the good. But I do hate that it always takes some person trying to make a bunch of money for something good to come of it, Yeah,
right, so here's my wacky theory. This is Wacky Theory 2A on why the ESRB have done this. Now, so, obviously, with the loot box things, the ESRB came out and said it wasn't gambling, even though it clearly is. And I think we discussed this, that we believe that the ESRB is in the game industry's back pocket. Now, you add on to the fact that also the game industry has, for a while now, been trying to push for a fully digital system. Obviously, digital distribution has got a lot bigger. Companies know that they can charge the same amount for digital copies than physical copies, therefore make more money. I think it is a case of the bigger companies paying ESRB to put forward these kind of things to stop more physical copies of indie games going out, therefore limiting the amount of physical games overall, and trying to push everything down into that digital distribution centre where they can literally control anything and take things away from you even though you've paid for it, and just completely screw over the consumer in the long term.
That's a very alarming theory there. I don't know if that's true, but it's certainly a theory. That's kind of scary.
Yeah, it's stuff like that worries me because obviously I've seen the amount of games that will appear on Steam and then disappear, and the PlayStation Network and the Xbox Live and things like that. You know, games that you've bought digitally just go away, and there's nothing you can do about it. You've got no recourse. You can't get your money back. You can't. You know, you've paid for basically at that point nothing. And it goes back to the entirety of, since the beginning of the industry, the old argument about whether you're owning the software or just owning a license to use the software. And obviously we know what companies would prefer you to have as opposed to what users would prefer to have. And that, to me, that's the most frightening thing about the digital future.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I think that obviously a lot of collectors feel strongly, in agreeing with that kind of mindset, that when you have something physically, no one can take it away with you, whereas digital licenses are just poof, they're gone. Yeah, and I think that's why physical copies will always be around. I think that's why we're always going to have people who want to own a disc or something equivalent, a chip or whatever have you, for a long time to come. So yeah, I think you're completely right on that. But it's a very interesting subject because, Dan brought up a good point. There is ways that this can go. There is ways this can be beneficial. This could make a whole new business off of putting out physical games for indie games, and that's more of a cup half full stance. Where I think, Terry, you've taken a more cup half empty type of stance, and it's very interesting.
Cup rapidly decreasing.
Right. Yeah. Cup is full of acid.
Cup structural integrity collapsing.
Yeah, I'm down to the dregs where you can't get out with a straw at the moment when it comes to the industry.
Oh no.
I just think the ESRB is pointless. I think we should just get rid of this archaic system. But that's just me. I'm for anarchy, I guess.
They won't do it because the reason the ESRB and PEGI and things came about is because the governments couldn't be asked to do it anymore, but law required there to be a rating system. So they won't go away unless someone else steps in or the government start doing it themselves. And I don't know about you, but I don't want the government getting involved.
Anarchy.
You should do it.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's enough of that. That's quite a heavy subject, and no doubt it will come up again in the future. But now, as he's been away for the last few weeks, we'll go over to Toby to talk about the recent acquisition of Respawn.
Yes, so this week, Respawn Entertainment, which has done Titanfall, and I think, have they actually done anything else?
Titanfall 2.
Not as very good. Not as Respawn, but the founders were the people who made the Medal of Honor series and then the Call of Duty series. They were Infinity Ward founders, so they've got a long history of revolutionising the first-person shooter.
No, destroying the first-person shooter. I think you're fine.
Hey, Titanfall's pretty cool.
Yeah, I've heard good things.
Hey, the first Call of Duty was really good, and let's face it, Modern Warfare was revolutionary at the time.
You can't beat giant robots smashing each other.
2 giant robots smashing each other.
The first 2 Medal of Honors were outstanding because they had those. I suppose it had a story where nothing else really had a story implemented like that. That, and they did the setting really well. But
let's talk about why we're discussing this. Let's ask who bought it. Oh yeah, EA.
EA has bought Respawn for $455 million. How wasn't it like 3 weeks ago that they shut down Visceral?
Oh my god.
Yeah. So here's what happened. The gist of it is that there was an offer for Respawn from Nexon, who are massive, and EA didn't want to see him go because EA liked the IP, so EA needed to get the money from somewhere to make it affordable, so they cut loose one of the studios that they have, which were Visceral, and then they obviously bought out Respawn. But everybody else saw it in reverse. We all saw Visceral shut down. obviously EA haven't got enough money to support these people. And then, what was it, a week later, all of a sudden Respawn are bought out with all of this money that people were thinking was quite scarce because of what had happened with Visceral. But it was because Nexon were trying to move in on Respawn. And who wouldn't?
So what you're saying is that another company was trying to make a move for Respawn, so EA ponied up the dough to get it done, is what you're saying?
Well, EA had first refusal. Basically, what happened is because of contracts, basically anybody who offered a bid on Respawn, EA could turn around and go, we'll offer 1 pence more, and Respawn had to accept. And so that's basically along the lines of what happened. So EA didn't want to 100% lose them, and the option was either have all of the tendrils cut off and that's it, they're gone, or buy the company out from under the nose of people trying to outbid them. And that could have happened the day Titanfall 2 came out. Somebody could have said, well, I want to buy Respawn because I know that EA will be disappointed with these sales, but I will offer £100 to buy Respawn. And if it had all gone through the right and they'd said, you know what, I know that's a ridiculous offer, but legally you have to consider that, then EA could have gone £101 and taken them on board. So that's what happened.
Let me. I have a question though. Maybe I missed this in the mix of what you were saying. Where did EA get the money from to do this?
I think EA had the money anyway, but I think the issue was that they had a budget for internal studios, and so they needed to cut one loose to bring another on board.
That's still kind of, for lack of a term, crappy.
Yeah, no, it really is, and there was a lot of talented people at Visceral, including, as we discussed previously, Amy Hennig, and a whole bunch of other people that we don't know the name of, but had obviously been, picked to work there or had simply worked there for a long time. A lot of very talented people were cut loose because the entity of a developer and their IP needed to be brought into the fold.
Well, if I'm gonna just jump in here. Well, I still think it's a shameful thing that they did. I mean, there's no way that you can paint this that it doesn't look good on them. Period. And they shut down one company and then suddenly magically had $400 million for another one. Yes, if they had policies and budgets and all that, I'm sure on a very technical scale this all made sense to them. But from the outside, which is where we're all sitting here, this looks messed up, and that's a fact. They canceled the game basically because it didn't have enough multiplayer aspects to it. They picked up another studio that, let's be honest here, is only known for... I hadn't heard of them until Titanfall. I'm sure they've done a lot of other things, and I'm sure they're a great studio, but I think what everyone's kind of afraid of at this point is that, we're all counting down the time before it gets shut down by EA. We're all making bets. Let's be honest.
The thing is, the two doctors from BioWare came out, and a few other people have done so as well, and have said, when you get bought out by a big company, of course your studio is going to be shut down. It's either going to be turned into a brand or it's going to be shut down at some point, because there's no point in keeping Team X and Team Y and Team Z together, because that doesn't actually really help anyone. You need to be a collective entity. While it's nice, and this ties into what we said last week as well, while it's nice to go, great, we just bought the Happy Wheels bus company, that if you buy out the Happy Wheels bus company and the bad Angry Wheels bus company, at some point you're going to be moving drivers over from one company to the other, and you're going to be bringing in new drivers, and there'll be a point where you've replaced every bus and every driver, and there's no point in really having the brand.
I see your point, and I get what you're saying, that it's part of a natural process of absolving and, kind of absorbing a company into your own, but I think there is something to be said about chemistry. I think there is something to be said about keeping people who work well together, because they do make great stuff when they are together. There's always going to be chemistry, and I think I don't. I think it's kind of. I see. You're right. I mean, your point's fair enough. I just think that it kind of sucks because then all these people that had great chemistry together, all these people who worked together for years, who know how to play off of each other, are suddenly going to be absorbed into this massive corporation where they're just going to be lost and folded into the mix.
I agree. I completely agree. I mean, but independent developers lose big leads all the time. So, like, we can say you're under a publisher, oh no, the synergy is being shattered daily. When they're first brought out by a publisher, yeah, obviously it's going to be hard transitioning from we are our own bosses to we have a boss that's occasionally calling us up to a meeting, and it's hard. But as an independent company, you still have a turnover. It just may be slightly accelerated in those first few months when you're acquired by a big publisher. I don't know. Maybe I'm playing devil's advocate a bit too hard.
No, I think you're bringing up a very fair point, and I think you're kind of looking at this from a corporate standpoint. I think you have fair points. I think that though we're still talking about Electronic Arts here, and Electronic Arts has a bit of a reputation for buying companies and then immediately dissolving them and just getting rid of them. They're a company killer. They don't keep companies around.
They are the evil alliance.
There was a point where that's what they were actually doing. They were buying out a developer, and the developer was finishing off the project they were doing, and then that was it. They were gone. It notoriously happened with Pandemic, didn't it? I think they were brought on board with one game, and they got that out. Was it the Saboteur? And then I think Mercenaries 2, they were gone before it hit the shelves, or it's the other way round. But and EA were doing a lot of backhanded business deals. They earned that nickname that Terry said for a good reason. They saw their competitor using a third party to do something, they'd buy them out. They saw their competitor starting market research in a certain area, they'd open their own team up to try and compete. They were properly, comedy capitalism expanding. It was absolutely ridiculous. There was a good reason that they earned the kind of like most sinister company award or whatever it was.
And that is a good question. I do want to ask, was this a hostile takeover, or was this something mutual that they both agreed to? Because if it was mutual, then they really have no one to blame but themselves for taking the money and saying, screw it.
If I'm brutally honest, if I worked at Respawn and EA, who had published the only 2 games we had made, and had shown a lot of faith in us, even though the first game didn't sell particularly well, and they said, you know what, do a second game because this is a great idea, and the second game didn't sell particularly well, and they said, you know what, we love this, so maybe we'll make a third, I'd probably be quite happy to receive further support from the people that had continued to allow us to develop our IP, even though it hadn't been as groundbreaking as anybody had expected, which is a shame because Titanfall had a lot of really cool ideas.
Yep. So, Toby, Terry, any thoughts?
You've been very thorough. It's a weird system of things.
My thoughts I gave to Dan the other day. Because I'm a very old school person, and I believe things like Call of Duty and games of that nature ruined the FPS genre, I couldn't really give 2 hoots.
All right, there you go.
Well, you better when Titanfall 3 comes out now, because that's guaranteed.
Not before their as yet unreleased Star Wars game.
That's true. They have secured whatever Star Wars game they're working on and, Titanfall.
Visceral was doing a Star Wars game, weren't they?
They were. It wasn't progressing very well, apparently.
Yeah, Visceral was making a Star Wars game.
No, it was going to be a single-player game, and EA don't like that.
Yes.
Yes.
No way to slap microtransactions on it.
Indeed, and Titanfall's perfect for it. That's why Titanfall, even though it sold like garbage, is getting another game, because they know they can monetize the hell out of it.
It's a good game, though. I mean, if they make a Titanfall game that's just basically reskinned for Star Wars, so it's like, oh yeah, just summon your AT. What's it called? AT-AT? AT-AT?
AT-AT.
Is that it? Yes. I know Star Wars. And and yes, summon your AT-AT, and yes, use your anti-AT-AT weapon, or whatever, and hack the drones or the clones. Then, and just totally reskinned Titanfall. Then it's still going to be pretty cool because Titanfall has a lot of awesome ideas. I don't know if Terry's played it. I assume he's already written it off, but
I've seen it being played. I haven't played it myself. My nephew's got it.
it's very cool because it distributes AI really well, and so it always feels like you're making progress, and it always feels like you're doing well, which so many online shooters completely fail at.
Yeah, and I'm not a huge fan of first-person shooters, and even I kind of liked it and saw they have a lot of cool, innovative ideas in the game.
Yeah. See, my biggest thing with it is I don't play online with other people, so there really wasn't much for me to go for there.
Which I think we should talk about PUBG next, then, for the next half hour. No, I'm just joking.
Stop recording. Let's just all go home.
Let's go home.
Toby's here. He wants to discuss that. Come on.
There's actually nothing to discuss for once.
Oh, wow, really?
Wait, there is!
Oh, good
There
God.
is.
There were-
Didn't you see that Crytek's Warface is receiving a new mode, which will involve 100 people dropped off an island?
Oh, my God.
Oh, heavens.
Yeah.
Fortnite was bad enough.
I forgot that Warface was even a thing still. I honestly thought that Crytek had pretty much
I'm so
gone.
sorry,
I mean,
Terry. I shouldn't have said
they
the
lost
name.
all of their studios, didn't they? So, but yeah. Anyway,
Let's move on quickly before we continue talking about PUBG.
Yes. Let's move on to another subject that I feel fairly strongly about. So the Xbone X released this week to weak fanfare.
Teraflops.
Teraflops. But the question was more about mid-gen upgrades and just what your thoughts are on those. I know mine.
I know mine.
I know mine is they're a bad idea. Stop it. Go away.
I think they're a brilliant idea, and they need to keep doing it and stay here.
I think there's a very specific market for them. I don't think they're necessarily evil, but I think it's a very niche, small market they're kind of aiming for. Not necessarily. They can't be aiming for everybody. Again, that's insane.
No, I mean, even Phil Spencer with the Xbox One X said he doesn't expect them to sell a lot of them. It is for a very specific consumer.
Right. So, in that regard, as long as the mindset stays that way, that like, okay, we're going to put out a product and it's going to be perfect for everybody, and then later on we might make an iteration that's for a specific group of people who love, extremely high detail or have a ridiculous amount of money to spend or whatever have you. That's fine. I don't care. That's how I feel about it. I don't own a PlayStation 4 Pro. I don't plan on owning one. I don't own a 4K TV. I might own one eventually, but it doesn't really bother me. I don't need to see the pixels in the clouds that much. I don't really care.
If you're more than 5 foot away from the TV, you won't see the difference anyway. In resolution. You might with the HDR lighting, things like that, but resolution-wise, you won't see the difference. If you're across the living room from your TV, it's going to make no difference to you whatsoever. I would have been more happy, because the thing is, my problem is with it is that they're trying to push 4K, but they're still not hitting 60 frames. Just stay at HD and push 60, or even higher than that. But most TVs can do 120 now. Frame rate's a hell of a lot more important than resolution.
My opinion, he says, elbowing everyone out of the way, is that iterative leapfrogging design is good. I think that when the Xbox 360 launched and there was an arcade model and there was a premium model and then later they added the Elite, I think that was a really good idea, because in stores it made it quite easy to
upselling
sell.
Dan? Upselling Dan?
Is he being sarcastic? I can't tell.
Because
No,
you
but
could...
he's making a really pointless argument because they weren't iterative upgrades. They just had different amounts of storage. There was no difference in the hardware.
No, but that's what I'm getting to. But it was something that differentiated them, and you could tell from the person, once you'd had that conversation with them, which one would suit them. So arcade would literally be like, you're buying 2 games and that's this and that and this and that. And it's good to have that choice. I think if they keep releasing a new, very powerful one every 2 years, then the super hardcore audience will obviously be renewing every 2 years, which will get Microsoft a little bit of money. And then when that gets a couple of years older and becomes the mid-range one, then they can...
Are you saying that consoles should become phones?
Yes.
Hell
PCs.
no.
Or
Hell
PCs.
no. That sounds
I agree
evil.
with George.
What do you mean?
That
Right.
is
As long as-
evil.
As long as the prices drop, as long as
Hang on,
the
hang
prices
on.
drop,
Prices drop. The iPhone 10 just came out as £1,000. Prices
Yeah.
do not drop.
but I blame that specifically on Apple trapping people into that ecosystem, and I think that if consoles align with PC hardware and how fast that turns over and how fast the prices of that drop, then I do think that the Xbox One X could be the worst console that they have available in 5 or 6 or 7 years, and they could be going, right, you buy a game on the, I don't know, Xbox One Z or something, that's pretty unoriginal, but whatever, and it'll work on the Z, it'll look beautiful, you can play it on the what or the what, but it won't work on the Xbox One, on the first Xbox One we released, because now blah blah blah. And so this would put control of the graphics and the visuals in the hand of the developers. And so a developer could say, right, we're going to make something that looks really, really good, and it's going to run on this, and this, and this. And, you know, those people that bought a console 12 years ago are going to have to upgrade, which is no different than the current generational gap. So if that can be regulated, and if that can be, you know, done and implemented well, I think that's good.
I think there's too many ways for this to slip and slide into chaos and into corporate greed. I think that I don't. People are going to treat, if the gaming industry did turn the way of the phone, they did turn the way. I think everybody immediately would go for Apple's method of doing things, is just charge ridiculous amounts of money. I don't think this is going to benefit anybody. I think it's just going to cause chaos. I don't see the benefit of this. I think people who buy consoles like the simplicity of consoles because they have to buy a one and done type of deal. They don't want to care about which model, what's in the graphics card, what's in the engine. They want a good machine right off the bat, done deal, let me play my games. I think that would just cause utter chaos.
Yeah. It will also make the industry incredibly lazy. We know the industry doesn't like optimising things particularly well at the moment anyway, and that will get even worse when they go, oh, just round the corner there's a new box that's got more power, so we won't bother optimising it, we'll just say it only works on that one. It's going to screw consumers over, split the consumer market right down the middle to the rich and the poor, basically, and we've already seen it happen. Because Microsoft and Sony are not the first people to do this. Nintendo have done it multiple times before, and they have always had issues where games do not work properly backwards. Pokemon Sun and Moon runs like garbage on an original 3DS, works fine on a new 3DS. That's an iterative upgrade which people don't understand fully, and people are getting screwed over by it. And that's going to continue to happen if it happens in the console space.
And I think Dan's idea, what I think he's trying to say, and I think it's not necessarily. The difference between the PC market and the phone market is that PC market is 100% accessible. I can make my own PC. I can't make my own phone, therefore I cannot make, in this case, my own console. If I could make my own console the same way I make my own PC, then yes, that could possibly work with the reiterations every 2 years. But that's putting the power in the consumer's hand, that you would have to make all these parts available and this entire method for creating consoles black and white for people to be able to do on their own.
Plus, I think it will also. Sorry, I think it'll also lead to the. At the end of every console cycle's life, there's always something, some big classic that has only been able to make possible because that developer has had that exact hardware for 4 or 5 years, and they have got down to the bones of that thing and just pulled every little ounce of power out of it. If there's going to be another system out every 18 months or to 2 years, you're not going to see that. It's just going to be, you're never going to get to that level anymore. You compare an early PS3 game to a late early PS3 game, there's almost a generational difference there alone, and it's the same hardware. That will go away. Developers will get lazy.
But they're not getting lazy when they're developing exclusively for the PC.
I don't get what you mean.
Well, games that are exclusive to the PC aren't...
Well, you still see that kind of thing happen anyway. Like the aforementioned Crytek, which PCs in 2017 still can't play the original game properly. Because it was built with theoretical future hardware in mind.
They were... Yeah, I mean, that's at the same time, that is an amazing example, and it's also a bad example because it was like their first game. Like you look at Crysis 3, it needed lower specs than Crysis 1 because they had learned how to optimize things by then. So yeah, I understand what you mean there, but games that are PC exclusive, not that such a thing should necessarily exist, are built with a set of specs in mind, and then they optimize and they just run with it.
I don't know. I think in the PC space, if a developer is going for a PC game, because the ecosystem on the PC has been around for so long, they know they've got to kind of optimize it and get it running on lower end machines. They can't just go to the next top end, and I don't think console developers will get that at first. They'll just go, oh, there's more power, we'll use it. PC developers generally don't do that. They already know they've got to support a ton of stuff.
Well, I mean, what is the end game for consoles then?
Go away.
I mean, consoles would go away if PCs were more modular, right? Because people like the accessibility of having a prefab PC or equivalent of a prefab PC in a console. So if PCs could be broken down to 4 or 5 pieces and then, plugged in and whatever bits and bobs are, just throw away this graphics card, plug in a new graphics card, all bought as boxes plugged in, then that would be the equivalent of an iterative console design as well.
Yeah. But my point is, I think consoles have lost that difference now between the console and the PC. There was always a difference. You had certain stuff on PC, you had certain stuff on a console. The hardware was completely different and totally incompatible. But now it's not. The Xbox and the PS4 are a PC at their base hardware level. So everything's just becoming the same. The only outlier you've got now is the Switch, which actually does have a completely separate purpose in as much as it's a portable system that you can take with you. If the consoles still keep going down this generic route of we're basically a PC in a prefab box, what is the point of them?
Then they're a victim of the push for graphics and visuals, which is the same thing people blame PCs for. And I would definitely say that consoles, at least Sony and Microsoft at the minute, have been doing that for a good, probably 8 or so years, it's all been about the best visuals, which is the same thing that console gamers regularly say that PC gamers are obsessed with.
If I could chime in here, I think this is an age-old argument. I think this is the argument of, this could go on forever. I think there is something to be said. The idea of kind of getting new hardware to people as fast as they can, because technology is constantly improving. But at the same time, consoles don't necessarily update as often as possibly they could. So I think there's arguments for both sides. But my question is anyone here buying an Xbox One X?
No.
No.
Toby? Okay, well, I don't plan on buying one either. So, well, actually, I don't know. My kids might want one, so we'll see what happens.
To be honest, my last point as well, and it's something that obviously, if you're an older gamer like I am, there is something to be said for that massive generational leap between systems. Going from a Super Nintendo to an N64 was a great feeling.
Yeah,
something that you're just not going to get anymore.
True, but that's also a compliment to technology as well. I mean, technology shouldn't necessarily work in these humongous gaps, because that's not necessarily how technology actually works. So I see what Dan's saying. I just think that it would lead too much to corporate greed, and but again, I see your point.
Indeed, but I mean, like I said, Sony and Microsoft are not the first people to do this. Nintendo have done it multiple times before.
And Sega.
The DS and the DSi, which had games that were meant to be compatible but didn't work fully because they didn't have the DSi features. The 3DS to the new 3DS has got games that aren't compatible, and there's games that just simply don't work on a standard 3DS now as well. Monster Hunter being one of them, I think. So that's the worry, is when it's people missing out after just 2 years and having to upgrade if they want to play certain games. If they're going to keep games compatible backwards, a few generations won't be too bad. But if, I think there is still going to be the occasional game. Now we've seen the One X as well. I can guarantee in less than a year we will see a game that doesn't run on the original Xbox One.
I think that's a little bit alarmist. I don't think that's true.
No,
I think people would flip out if that happened.
No, but this is the thing. So originally Xbox said, no, everything's going to be compatible with the original Xbox One X. Then they came out a couple of months ago and said, may not be the case. And that to me is worrying. Because if they do then start almost forcing a two year upgrade cycle on consoles, I'm out completely.
Well, again, I think that is the beautiful part between PC. The difference between PC and consoles is that you can reiterate your PC over and over again. You're not necessarily older PCs might not run a game, but at least you can still try. The idea that a console couldn't run a game at all would really be really sucky.
Indeed. So, another one for you, George, I think, as Dan's had to just run off for a bit of a family emergency. So StarCraft 2's going free to play.
Oh, okay. Well, so we're talking about BlizzCon now. Cool. All right. There's a lot.
We run out of time last week, so
there's a lot that happened at BlizzCon. Not necessarily just StarCraft 2, but I will touch upon that briefly. Yeah, they released officially the first entire campaign, because there's 3. There's Heart of the Swarm, and then the Protoss one, which I can't remember his name for the life of me for some reason. Basically, they released the entire first campaign of StarCraft for free. You can download it now. If you had the first one, you get the second one for free. And I don't know if it continues into the third one, but you get the point, though. And they're basically kind of opening up to everybody, letting everybody play, enjoy StarCraft 2, which is pretty sweet. StarCraft 2, great game, a lot of RTS players. One of the primary highlights, aside from all the new expansions on World of Warcraft and their card game Hearthstone, the thing I was most excited about was that we finally got an announcement for Vanilla WoW. Vanilla WoW is finally coming. They're finally making support for it. We're going to get to...
Oh, what, they're going to start all vanilla servers again?
Yes. No expansions, just vanilla
That's
WoW.
interesting. That is interesting. I could actually go and play that, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's gotten so many people excited. I'm personally very excited because I miss old Warcraft. I'm sure there's a lot of people that do, and now they're finally going to officially support it.
Yeah. Having official support is great because obviously, I think we discussed it a few weeks back. There are tons and tons of third-party servers that you can play on around the web.
Right, yeah.
And they are massively populated as well. They have a lot of players.
Well,
so it's obviously something that is wanted.
Yeah, and there's a lot of kerfuffle, in the gaming news about servers being shut down because they started reaching millions of players, and there's a lot of problems that came of that. So now that they are, doing it themselves, we don't have to worry about that. We all get to enjoy what we want, and it's just like the best news, in my opinion, out of BlizzCon this year.
Is it all going to be included in your standard Warcraft subscription, or is it going to be segregated, or how's it going to work? When you log in, do you go, I want to play vanilla?
I do believe it'll be just a dedicated server. I do believe it'll probably be subscription based, but there isn't any official details yet. All they've done is basically say we're doing it, and no further details than that.
Yeah, because the only issue I can see with it is if they try and do it completely separate. If you're a WoW player and you're playing the current one, but you also want to, maybe dip back into vanilla, if you have to subscribe to two things, that might annoy people.
I don't think they would do that.
If it was all built in and when you open up WoW, you can go right, click on vanilla or click on current or whatever, then yeah, that's all good.
I mean, well, I can see what you're saying, yeah, because technically they're two totally different kinds of programs. So I don't know. That's a good question. That is a very actually good strong possibility because vanilla WoW is obviously very, very different from the new stuff. So, yeah, I mean, that is a possibility. Two different applications, possibly.
Yeah, different applications isn't the issue. It's just if it's separate subscriptions, that would be my issue with it.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying, because they are going to be kind of separate applications that actually could be something that... Maybe it'll be cheaper, though. That could be cool, too, because, it's an older game. Maybe it'll be cheaper. So I would gladly pay $8, $9 to play vanilla WoW every month, and yeah, that'd be great for me.
Yeah, that is certainly cool. I just want more Diablo. Give me more.
Yeah, and that's the thing about this BlizzCon this year. At least personally, I felt, aside from that one major announcement for vanilla WoW, I felt like this BlizzCon was certainly lacking. I mean, it kind of played to its crowd. It gave it more expansions, more of what people already love, but I just didn't feel like they really did anything new this year, which was kind of disappointing to me.
No big Overwatch announcements or anything?
I think they announced a new character, whose name I can't remember.
Moira, I believe.
Yep, that's right, yeah. And was there anything else I missed, Toby? I think that's pretty much it.
The new character on the PTR, I think that's about it for their most recent update.
Yeah, so it was a cool BlizzCon because of the vanilla WoW announcement, but other than that, I mean, I'd have certainly liked a little bit something more, maybe a new IP or just a sequel to Warcraft 3, for God's sakes. We've been waiting for years.
Single player stuff, it doesn't make money, does it? They ain't going to do that.
But Warcraft 4 would be amazing. I mean,
yes, it more than likely would be, yeah. But or just Diablo 4. Just do another Diablo.
We had Diablo 3, less than 3 years ago? They're not going to make another Diablo for a while.
No, it weren't less than 3 years ago. It's older than that. That's at least 5 or 6 years old now.
But the expansion was like 3 years ago, wasn't it?
Well, they're still putting out things for the game as well. Like they put out the Necromancer recently, so I don't really... They're still putting out stuff for Diablo 3. I think we'll likely see a Warcraft 4. Because I want that.
Yeah, no, it's just a shame because obviously last year at BlizzCon they had that big tease. You had that like D4 dice that came in the little package that you got when you went there, and there was other things that referenced Diablo and 4, and everyone was getting really excited, and then they just went, all a joke, you're not getting Diablo 4, you goons. Here's a Necromancer.
Oh, I didn't hear about that, that's funny.
But yeah, because they had a D4 dice in there, but it was printed wrong, so all the 4s were on one side, which isn't how a D4 obviously works. And yeah, it was a big tease for no payoff.
Gotcha. That's funny.
So let's move on. Here's one that Dan put in there, and it's just a general discussion. I'm not sure how much Toby's going to be able to add to this, but maybe it was something that he grew up with. And we're just talking about. So 10 years ago was an absolutely huge year for games. So in 2007, we had things like the first Assassin's Creed, the first Modern Warfare, Crysis, Uncharted, Mass Effect. Super Mario Galaxy came out that year as well, and we had the orange box, so things like Portal and the episode 2 of Half-Life, Stalker, Witcher, Bioshock. It was an absolutely brilliant year. Can you think of any other particular years possibly that had as many big games and maybe as many big starts to series as that?
I didn't know Toby was 10 years old.
It's a very closely kept secret.
Oh my god, you sound so mature for your age.
Apparently it seems to happen every 10 years. Not Toby being born. But like a big bumper year. I mean, obviously there are a lot of other years where you had a lot of release. The following year you had Far Cry 2, Fallout 3, Fable 3 and a bunch of other stuff as well, just all cropped up that year, and that was a really big bumper Christmas. But yeah, 2007 was definitely an exceptional year. Obviously Halo 3 as well, which was the first one on the 360. It was very much... It was also the year that the PS3 launched in the UK as well, so it was kind of the first year, at least in the UK. I know it obviously wasn't in other places where we had all of that gen on the market. Wasn't it the year that the Wii launched as well? That makes sense based on Galaxy launching.
Possibly. The Wii came out in November.
Yeah.
The Wii...
Galaxy wasn't a launch title, was it?
No, Galaxy came a while later. Zelda was the big launch title.
Yeah, of course it was.
Twilight Princess.
But either way, it really was
Was it Twilight Princess? Yeah, it was, because that came out on the GameCube as well.
Yeah, because one was left-handed and one was right-handed.
Yeah.
Either way, it was obviously at the time we didn't know that Crysis was going to go on to do free games. We didn't know that Assassin's Creed was going to go on to do 745 games. We didn't know that COD 4 Modern Warfare was going to result in the 4 being dropped and
and then becoming a yearly franchise. Because it wasn't a yearly franchise before then, was it? That was when it started.
It wasn't. That was pretty much the year that yearly franchises started as well.
Yeah, because you got Uncharted there as well. That didn't become a yearly franchise, but that went quickly. But Assassin's Creed number 2 came out relatively quickly after the first one.
There was a bit of a break after Assassin's Creed 2, actually, that's it. And then there was definitely a break recently. Halo 3, after that they started squeezing out a Halo game almost every year, because they brought in the Wars series and other ones as well. But
the orange box, the last thing that Valve ever did.
Yeah, Half-Life 2 Episode 2, obviously that they released a new one every year. Oh wait, and then but no, it was a really big year for the consoles. Grand Theft Auto 4 was meant to release that year as well, so that would have been absolutely massive. Yeah, it got delayed till the next year. But no, it was a real bumpy year, and obviously we saw a lot of other titles fail and fall by the wayside and just disappear as well. I mean, notoriously, Medal of Honor released, I think it was Airborne that year, which was their last attempt at a World War II one, and it just fell completely flat because a couple of weeks later Modern Warfare came out, and that was it. Kind of that was pretty much the death of the World War II shooter, or the World War shooter. You had Shell Shock and a few others. I think a Brothers in Arms launched after as well. But none of them ever touched on what Modern Warfare did.
And you say it happens every 10 years. Obviously, this year World War Two has come back to COD,
isn't it? Which is weird. No one thought it was ever going to happen again. People were complaining 2 or 3 years back, saying, "Why don't we go back to those now?" I'm getting sick of Modern War. Actually, it's not even Modern War now because we got laser beams and we're on the friggin' moon.
I think that's what the reason was. They went, "Oops, we went too far forward. Let's go back."
That's it. That's it.
If we're talking about games that released a decade ago, there's always BioShock. Love BioShock.
Yeah. BioShock was revolutionary in its own way as well.
It's a shame that the other two have never got that same feeling again. BioShock 2, I felt it was all right, but it wasn't anywhere near as good as the first one.
It was about expanding the universe,
Yeah, and then Infinite again is good, but it hasn't got that magic that first one did have.
Agreed. Oh, WarioWare Smooth Moves also came out, which is one of the best games that was ever made for the Wii.
I love the WarioWare games.
They are so good. There needs to be more games that are like that, more mini games, more bishy bashy special games, and more Mario Party and more stuff like that.
I can see a WarioWare game coming out on the Switch.
I hope
it just
so.
seems perfectly matched to it. You've got the motion controls, you've got the portability to take it anywhere. It's just one of them things. It could become a big party game.
I hope you're right.
If 1-2 Switch was basically called WarioWare Switch, it probably would have sold gangbusters.
Agreed. I can definitely agree with you on that one.
Because obviously, if you look at 1-2 Switch, a lot of the games in that look like they could be WarioWare games, like the Milking a Cow, and things like that.
Yeah, if they just had obnoxious noses and funny moustaches and odd noises like bleh, then yeah, it would have totally made it and been outstanding. Well, I mean, it did well anyway, didn't it? But
yeah, it did better than I expected it to. But then I suppose I'm not the average consumer that they were going for there. Moving around while playing video games? What kind of madness is this?
yeah, but here we are.
The only way that I will get moving playing video games is when I can have my Virtuix Omni and my VR headset and run around in Skyrim. I'd be as thin as a rake if I had that set up.
Yeah, and now here we are talking about VR when 10 years ago we'd have laughed at anybody mentioning it.
Yeah.
That's the other thing
actually,
as well, isn't it?
Let's have a little discussion about that. Why not? It is weird that obviously the first VR movement was like the mid-90s. Earlier than that, possibly, because it was all Amiga-powered stuff. So it would have been early 90s when the virtuality machines were in arcades and things like that. So that's taken a good 25 years to come to the forefront again. It's a bit crazy to think about.
I mean, they didn't even attempt it in the noughties, did they? Really?
Well, Jaguar were going to
Yeah.
Atari. I mean, with they were toying with a Jaguar VR system, but that would have been god awful.
I mean, it's strange that it just... I mean, I suppose 3D was the big thing. Though it wasn't 2007, it was a couple of years later, wasn't it? It might have even been the teens. But 3D became a big thing for a while, although that's most definitely gone away now that VR has become viable, even though, obviously, it's on the threshold. But
yeah, it's a shame. I was actually a big fan of 3D. I've got a 3D TV and I absolutely loved it. And obviously the 3DS is brilliant, but now I tend to turn the 3D off because I've got an old 3DS and the 3D is a bit rubbish on the original version. Meant to be better in the later iterations. But yeah, it's a shame. But I suppose in VR you've got full stereoscopic 3D anyway, so there's no real need to have a TV that does it anymore.
that's fair. Do you know what else launched in 2007?
Probably, but I probably can't remember it.
The B movie.
Wales coming to
So now every time we mention a game that was released in 2007, I'm going to play the B movie at twice the speed.
Oh
No. That was a terrible meme. I'm glad that's gone.
Wait, really?
Yeah, that was 2007 B movie.
Wow.
That is an old meme.
I'm going to see that.
The meme is new.
Wow.
But yes, I think
10 years old, blimey. Just fading out, talking about B-movie.
No, anyway, so that is the end of the episode 13 of the Big Boss Babble podcast. And thank you to the guys that have joined me this week. And we will see you next time. Bye for now.
bye.
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 Yeah. No, joking, bye.